Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, blockchains. It's like overnight this entire new vocabulary has come out of nowhere and you're expected to understand it if you want to get in on this new wave. But fortunately, it doesn't have to be as scary as it sounds, and you don't have to be a computer scientist to grasp it. I mean, most people are starting to see that fiat currencies around the world are at the very least declining, but could be on the brink of a catastrophic collapse. But there's this new technology that's waiting in the wings, ready to raise up out of the ashes. Almost everyone has heard about Bitcoin and crypto now. Most people have no idea what the blockchain is, the technology behind it, or why it's so powerful. But you will in just a minute. It's Renegade News. Welcome back to Renegade News. I'm your host, Glenn Kowalski. It's our mission to help freedom seekers like you break free from the system, pay less tax, and live anywhere in the world that you want. So smash that subscribe and the notification button, and let's get right into it. Blockchain technology, or simply the blockchain, is the main tech behind Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And it's been the deciding factor that has made today's cryptocurrencies so much better than any of the failed digital currency attempts that have happened in the past. The blockchain, as we know it, was developed by an anonymous programmer known as Satoshi Nakamoto. And while no one knows this hacker's real identity, he was searching for a cryptographic solution to create a digital coin. In other words, he was looking for a way to encrypt and protect data so that it couldn't be decrypted by anyone who doesn't have the proper codes. Now, while normal encryption scrambles data so that nothing can read it, the blockchain actually combines that encryption with the absolute opposite of it, which is complete transparency in the form of a public ledger. So even though your private key is strongly encrypted, and if you ever lose it, you can never actually recover any of those funds, all of the transactions themselves can be seen and they're all shared on a public ledger, meaning that you never have to trust any of the other parties involved in any transaction. The transactions themselves are called trustless, since the system handles the entire transaction and no individual can hack or block a transaction without simultaneously hitting thousands of computers all at once. It's a virtually impossible task, even with quantum computing, which we're nowhere near yet. That means you never have to trust whether any of the coins that are sent to you are valid. And there aren't expensive things like failed transactions or chargebacks like there are on credit cards. Once any coins are sent to you, the system ensures that the transaction was valid and the coins now belong to you. In the blockchain, each coin has a digital signature and each owner has a mark that represents their ownership of that coin. So each coin is tracked through its entire lifetime, and it's given this unprecedented level of transparency that you never get with normal money. That removes the need for a third party like a bank to process those transactions, since the system itself is automatically doing this through its own code. For the blockchain to accomplish all of its goals of safe, secure, and trustless transactions, it has three pillars: decentralization, transparency, and immutability. The most important advantage over centralized currencies like fiat US dollars and all other world currencies is that the blockchain keeps it decentralized. That means that no single authority controls what happens over the network. Unlike the US dollar that can be printed on demand by edicts from the central bank or the Federal Reserve, the blockchain uses a distributed ledger and a consensus algorithm that's installed on tens of thousands of computers that participate within the blockchain network. That means that a single person like a Janet Yellen or even a group or a conglomerate can't control what happens over the network. And it's also a lot less prone to breakdown than a central system like the bank uses. Next, the blockchain requires transparency. Because while the transactions on the blockchain themselves are guaranteed to be anonymous, as far as who makes the transaction goes, the blockchain still makes every transaction completely transparent. This is done by assigning every person on the network a public key. But it keeps you anonymous because that public key can't be traced back to any single person, except for the person maybe that you gave it to, and it can be immediately changed at any time. As I mentioned earlier, every transaction can, though, be tracked through its lifetime. Finally, the blockchain requires immutability. According to dictionary.com, immutability means the state or condition of being unchangeable. And this is really one of the most interesting aspects of the blockchain, in that any transaction, once it happens, can't be altered, it can't be reversed, and it can't be deleted. Every change that's written is permanent. Since the blockchain runs on this distributed ledger, every node or every computer in the system has a copy of every single transaction, and they're all duplicated. That means you can't hack the blockchain by changing just a value on the ledger, because all of the other copies around the world would have to agree. And if they didn't, then consensus isn't going to be reached. The blockchain works through the use of public and private keys. A private key initiates the transaction and generates a unique signature on the network. That signature can't be changed. It's immutable. That transaction is then broadcast across the network using the receiver, the person you're sending to, using their public key. All of the nodes or the computers within the network can then use what's called a consensus mechanism to determine if the transaction is valid or not. Really what that means is a complicated way of saying that each computer uses its own copy of that public ledger, and it completes a number of different tests. They all check out things like, does the private key have the right to send the coins? Do they have the balance? Do they own those coins? Is the public key that they're sending to a valid address? Those types of tests. Once all the computers across the network agree that the transaction is valid, that transaction then gets written simultaneously into all of the computers on the network, and the transaction is done. The cryptocurrency has now been transferred. And that's essentially all there is to understanding the blockchain. That whole process of writing the information into the blockchain, that's all where mining comes in. But that's outside of the scope today. We'll talk about that in another video. And if you want to discover more about how cryptocurrency and blockchain technology are revolutionizing our lives, giving us countless opportunities to break free from the system, pay less tax, and live anywhere in the world you want, click the video that you see on the screen right now. And don't forget to subscribe to Renegade News so that every week you see the latest infringements and wins in your search for more freedom and liberty in this unfree world.